Hello, bookish friends. We are talking about The War of Two Queens by Jennifer Armentrout. Have several copies. The shaking's gonna drive me nuts. Okay. And this one, my boyfriend got me for Christmas because he understood the assignment. Okay. Now, if you're watching this video, you've probably seen all the rest and you're pretty familiar with what we're doing. We are doing a review and recap of The War of Two Queens. And so this is so that for folks, when the new books come out, and yes, I know I'm a little behind, that is because when The War of Two Queens came out, I was not in a good place mentally, so I was not reading anything for about a 6-month period. So I have just finished it, probably last week, and it was amazing, as I knew it would be because it's Jen. So, obviously I gave it 5 stars. If you don't know, The War of Two Queens is book number 4 in the Blood and Ash series. And if you haven't heard of From Blood and Ash, you probably don't have TikTok. It is a fantasy romance. To me, it's just a fantasy, but whatever. I don't make them rules. It is a fantasy romance series by Jennifer Armentrout. It is amazing. The writing is superb. I can't say enough good things about it. It starts off, when you start off in Blood and Ash, you're literally just dropped in this world, and she slowly reveals things as she goes. And I love that. That was one of my favorite parts, that was one of my favorite parts of the series, was just the kind of not knowing. But Jen has always said that she is a romance writer, and romance writers always give us those happy endings. So we kind of know we're going to have that. So this is no different. All right, so that is the end of the review portion. I'm going to go into the recap. So basically, I just kind of go over what happened in the story as like a refresher for folks. So when the book starts off, it picks up where the other one, A Crown of Gilded Bones, left off. Cass is chained up in a dungeon somewhere. The Blood Queen's handmaids are bleeding him, and Craven keep getting in and attacking him. Okay. Isbeth is some sort of Demis or false god. She tells him that a Demis is not born but made when a god commits the forbidden act of ascending a mortal who was not chosen. So we know from the books previously up to this point that there are these heartmate trials, right? So Isbeth and Malik were heartmates, and I guess Malik had asked for the heartmate trials in order to make Isbeth immortal, so that they wouldn't have to be apart, and the gods said no, and Malik went and made her into what he made her into, which is something more than an ascended, but not quite a god. So Isbeth shows Cass King Jalara's head, and Cass starts laughing and says it's the best thing he's seen in a long time. Cass calls Isbeth Isbitch, which this is like, first of all, that scene was hilarious because Cass has like zero you-know-whats to give. But also, it's funny for me, that scene, because it's a nod to Jaylanders and to the readers. So the whole casserole thing was from Jaylanders. If you don't know what Jaylanders is, that's Jen's Facebook group. And so this was another nod to Jaylanders because Isbeth is called Isbitch in Jaylander. So we switch back to Poppy. So this is dual POV while they're separated. I don't think that's a shock for anybody because the characters aren't together. So when Poppy gets to Messine, which is, a town, there's people literally crucified to the gates with veils on their heads. It's like and they've been turned into Craven. And so it's like a message to Poppy, which, by the way, I have on my Blood and Ash shirt, which says, "You will bow before your queen or bleed before her." But it's a message to Poppy, and also I feel like because Jen loved The Walking Dead, that is a nod to The Walking. She obviously can't mention The Walking Dead because this is a fantasy book, but it's like a nod to, because there was a community that actually had zombies on their gates. So I feel like this was kind of a little wink and a nod to The Walking Dead. When they get to the basement of the manor, there's like cells filled with Craven. Craven are like the zombies, the turned people. Poppy is checking out the library and the scrolls, and she finds something talking about the rite that actually predates the Ascended. And there's this kind of odd like widow that's been hanging out around the manor, and she like sees Poppy looking through the scrolls and tells her that the rite is older than sin and most kin, but not as old as the first mortal, birthed from the flesh of a primal and the fire of a draken. And Poppy asks the woman how old the records are, and she says older than the kingdom and most wisdom, and she says her name is Vessa, Vessa. So we're thinking like, oh, it's this kindly old woman. Here's what I was thinking, because I've read Covenant. By the way, if you haven't, you should read it. It's an amazing series. Because there's this oracle that gives prophecies, and so I assumed that's what this was going to be. And Jen laughed. Poppy asks what she does, and Vessa says, I serve while I wait. And when she asks what she's waiting for, she says, one born from a grave misdeed of a great and terrible primal power with blood full of ash and ice. Her words rattled her entire body, raising the tiny hairs all over mine. The chosen will usher in the end, remaking the realms, the harbinger of death and destruction. So then the woman tries to stab Poppy. Poppy fights her off, then has her placed in a locked bed chamber, because Poppy's like, oh, you know, it's an elderly woman, like, I'm not going to kill her. She should have killed her. Anyway, so she shows Kieran the ledger and wonders about like all the third kids and the revenants, you know, because like all we know is that the third kids are sent to serve the gods, and we have no idea what happens after that. I mean, I think we think we know. So Poppy and Delano are wandering the town with Reaver, and they have this long conversation about Poppy's powers and what will weaken her. So using her powers will obviously make her weak, and that she's going to have to feed. And she asks about the consort and what her name is, and Reaver says her name is a shadow in the ember, a light in the flame, and a fire in the flesh. The primal of life has forbidden us to speak or write her name. So nobody's allowed to say her name. Nobody from the other realm, at least. So then Kieran shows up with a box from a royal guard, and it just says a gift for the Queen of Atlantia from the Queen of Solace. So it's a gift for Poppy from Isbeth. So can't be anything good. Poppy has to bleed on the box to get it to open, and it's Cass's finger. Now, I kind of have to stop, because when I was reading the book, I thought it was his whole flipping hand. And apparently I was not the only one, because a lot of people in Jaylanders thought it was his whole entire hand too. So it was not. It was his finger. It gets clarified later on, but I'm just like, that chopped off his whole hand. So obviously Poppy loses it and goes all like goddess, and Kieran has to like kind of talk her down. And she's like, that's it. We're going to Carcedonia. And after we take Oak Ambler, I'm going to get my boo, basically. So Kieran's like, well, I'm going with you then. And he tells her how him and Cass are like, you know, how they have like a soul bond. And like they're not just best friends, but they're brothers. And Kieran takes care of Cass's finger and gives Poppy the ring. And Poppy is telling Kieran that she will need to feed, that Reaver told her that she's going to have to feed. And Kieran is like, well, can you feed from a wolven? And Poppy is like, well, that falls into the everything but a draken category. Because Reaver, when she's like, okay, what do I feed on? He's like, anything but a draken. Don't try and feed from a draken. So Kieran offers himself as tribute. I know he don't mean it like that. It's just because he loves her. But still, I'm like, And she's like, no, you know, you're just doing this because of the Notom bond. That's the bond that she has with the Wolven. And he's like, no, it's because of my friendship with Cass and my friendship with you. And I was just like, oh, like, that's so sweet. So we switch to Cass, and Cass is thinking about Miss Willow's diary. Of course he is. Cass is like chained up, being tortured, bled out, had his finger cut off, and he's thinking about Poppy reading Miss Willow's diary. And one of the revenants comes in, and she's like super chipper. And she's talking about stuff, and Cass is like, "What are you talking about?" And she says, now this is a quote, "A god born a mortal, carrying the blood of the primal of life and the primal of death, upon ascension was foretold," the handmaiden whispered. "Or so they say," and they say a lot. Either way, she broke those primal wards when she ascended into her godhood. So I'm pretty sure she's talking about Poppy, and she's saying that when Poppy ascended, she did something to break the wards. She said he said something about, well, I know she's descended from Nyctos, and Nyctos is the primal of life and death. And she says, if you think Granddaddy is the true primal of life and the true primal of death, then you know nothing. And of course, all I can think of is Ygritte from Game of Thrones. You know nothing, Jon Snow. But then she says the queen has her plans, and Cass says the whole remaking the realms BS, and she says to remake something, one must first destroy it. "A cold wind hit the length of my spine. The Blood Queen is not that powerful." This is Cass talking. And the handmaiden says she may not be. The handmaiden's back was unnaturally stiff, but she knew how to bring to life something that was. So we switch back to Poppy. She and Venetta are talking, and Venetta tells her that Ian said that the temples in Solus had been around since the gods walked the realm, and that they can be used to neutralize the gods and as a gateway to Elysium. And Poppy dreams about Cass in the cave, but then all of a sudden it's like real, like they're really touching each other and they're really together in the cave. And Cass says that they're heartmates, and when she wakes up, she can still smell him, pine and spice, but she also smells the lilac smell. That has been, like, that's kind of been throughout the series, is she smells the lilacs. So she tells Kieran about the dream, and he tells her that heartmates can walk in each other's dreams. But then a storm comes up, and there's all this really, like, freaky, terrible lightning, okay? Like, freaky, terrible lightning. And the Draken are flying, and Poppy tells Reaver to get them down, and they do, but not before they get hit with the lightning. So she tries to heal them and bring them back, but she can't, and Reaver tells her that she's not able to. He says that only the primal of life can restore life to a being of two worlds, and she ends up losing like 16 Draken. So that's the majority of her Draken forces, okay? So Niall tells them that the same thing happened when Poppy ascended, and Reaver tells them that it was an awakening of death. So Poppy heads for Vasa's room, and she's surrounded by smoke in a circle of her own blood. So she's the one who killed the Draken. She did some sort of ritual, some sort of magic. So Poppy kills her, and I'm like, insert my shrug, because yeah. Like, she killed Draken. She had to die. So Reaver tells them that Vesa smelled like the god of death, not Nyctos, but Colas. And he tells them that the third sons and daughters can be made revenants because they carry ether in them. So he tells them that Ethos, the first primal of life, and Nectus, the first Draken, made the first mortal. That Ethos gave his flesh and Nectus gave his fire, so that all mortals carry some amount of ether in them. It's just dormant. Reaver tells them that at one time it was an honor for third sons and daughters to go to Elysium and serve the gods, and if they chose, and they could have immortality. So there really used to be an actual rite where they actually used to go to Elysium and serve the gods. Okay, so apparently Reaver also tells Poppy that Draken blood, even a drop, can kill a revenant. So Poppy is talking with Kieran, and she feels bad because she's like, if I had killed Vasa, the Draken would still be alive. And Poppy realizes that if she can't bring back the Draken, then she also can't bring back Wolven, and she wants to do the joining so that she and Cass won't lose Kieran. So let me just kind of stop here, and let's just talk about this whole joining thing, because there were a lot of people who were upset, who were angry, which I do not understand, because it has literally been foreshadowed the entire series. This is not something new that just came out of nowhere. The joining has been foreshadowed the entire series. Like, it was literally talked about in the very first book, when it was mentioned in Miss Wallace's diary. Cass and Poppy have talked about it. This is not something that just came out of nowhere. So, like, I don't know what to say. So anyway, Poppy meets with Valen, Cass's father, and the generals. Some of them treat her like an idiot because I don't know if it's because she has a vagina or because she's young or what. So she has to like show them that like, look, I'm a god and I said what I said. Okay. So Poppy tells them that she plans to get Cass, and Valen is not happy. He's worried for her. Valen offers to go with her, but she forbids it because of what Isbeth would do to him if she got her hands on him. Because she's like, look, if this goes bad, Isbeth would do terrible things to you. So we switch back to Cass. He's in his cell. Malik, his brother, has come, and Malik like cleans Cass's hand because it's infected because they cut his finger off in a dirty, nasty cell. So, Malik tells Cass that Jalara tortured and killed Preela, his bonded wolven, and turned her bones into bloodstone daggers. Malik tells Cass that he'll be reunited with his queen sooner rather than later. So basically, like, he's telling them Poppy's on the way. So Poppy is getting ready. She's getting dressed, and she's doing the whole maiden thing because that is a symbol that people recognize. So Valen comes to talk to her, and she says she's still like ticked that he and Ileana lied about Isbeth, that Isbeth is the mistress that Ileana tried to kill. And Valen tells her that, you know, he has a lot of regrets and that that's one of them. As they're getting ready to march out, though, there's this cute little moment where one of the soldiers, or one of the wolven maybe, Hissa, Hissa, and her girlfriend have this little moment where one says to the other one, be careful, and the other one says, but be brave. And Poppy like loves that. She's like, I'm stealing that. I think that's freaking adorable. So luckily, like, because Poppy had sent a warning ahead of time to the people in this town that, hey, we're coming, so you might order. So her warning actually saves like thousands of people at Oak Ambler. However, lots of soldiers die by dragon fire because they don't leave or back down or open the gates. Or who looks at a dragon's like, nah, bro, I'm gonna stay right here. Like who? Anyway, so when they get into the town, they see the majority of the soldiers are protecting the Ascended's homes. Imagine that. Kieran protects Poppy with his shield as the enemy like sends arrow volleys, and then they actually strike the wolven, and Poppy's like, nope, that's it. So she uses her powers to kill him. And then Poppy's worried about the Draken, and she's like, why don't you guys, like, go rest? And so Reaver's like, and rests, like, literally on the top of the castle. Because he's hardcore. So Poppy speaks to the remaining guards and shows them that, you know, like, she's God and she ain't playing. And so they surrender. And as they're heading for the underground chambers in the castle, there's no guards, and there should be. And that's because there's lots of Craven. So then the mist shows up and the Craven attack, and they're like fresh. So basically the Ascended killed all the like, peasants and turned them into Craven, and Arden, one of the wolves, goes into the mist and he gets killed. Poppy tries to bring him back and can't. So I think all of this serves to like show you the reasoning behind the joining, right? Because she can't bring them back. She can heal them, but she can't bring them back. So Valen tells Poppy that they think the Ascended left the trap of Craven and fled, but she knows that something else is up. She's like, what else is it? Because, like, I can tell something else is going on. And he's like, well, there's a message, but you don't want to see it. And she's kind of like, well, I'll be the judge of that. It is literally a bunch of people dressed up as the maiden and killed, and there is a message written in blood that says, all you will liberate is death. I mean, these people are just terrible. So when they get to it gets worse, y'all. It gets so much worse. So when they get to the temple, there's all these priests and priestesses all wearing white, and they tell Poppy that they've been waiting for her, and then they proceed to speak about this prophecy. And then there's also a Ascended serving in the temple, and Poppy's like, where's all the kids? Because they literally, as they were coming into town, had people like, oh, if you see my child such and such, will you give them their favorite teddy bear? I mean, like, So Poppy's like, where's all the children that are given over to the right? And the priest is like, oh, I'll take you to see them. And there's this underground chamber with piles and piles of little children's bodies. And those are the children that are given to the right. They're killed. And I literally put in parentheses, I think we already knew that. Like, I think we all knew, because nobody ever sees them again, that nothing good was happening. So Poppy lines the priest and priestess up in front of all the bodies and kills them all. And Poppy is going around healing all the injured that she can. And then Reaver comes in wearing a sheet because he's Reaver. And he tells Poppy how much she reminds him of the consort. And Poppy asks, why does the consort sleep so deeply? And Reaver says, because it was the only way to stop her. And Poppy's like, what does that mean? He's like, both of her sons are neither dead nor alive. And she would unleash herself if she were awake. Like, she would mess some stuff up, okay? Because them's her kids. So Kieran comes to get Poppy to heal Perry, one of the Wolven. And Reaver and Kieran have this little spat. And Reaver tells Kieran Poppy was dizzy. She says she's fine after she's like, I was fine after I ate. And then after Poppy heals Perry, she makes Kieran promise that if she ever starts to act like the consort, to put her under the ground, and he promises. And again, I would like to point out that Jen foreshadows things. So I have a feeling that Poppy or Cass, one or both of them, is going to have to put Poppy in deity bones under the ground. So, Poppy has to explain to all those parents, like, what happened to their kids. And she's like, if you want to leave, we're not going to stop you. And then they talk to this guy, Sven, about using primal magic to find Cass. And he's like, well, yeah, if you have, like, something, an object of theirs, basically. So then some people from Atlantia come to see Poppy, and it's Tawny. And Tawny tells Poppy that she saw Victor. She says she thought she was dying. We did too, Tawny. We did too. And that she was heading for the Vale, but then she saw Victor, and Victor, with an E-R, was a Victor with an O-R. So yay. So, Leopold, Poppy's adoptive father, was a Victor too. Victors are guardians. They serve to protect someone with a purpose and make sure that their fate is carried out. There's another prophecy, and I'm not going to read it because it just makes my head hurt. I always get so frustrated because I try and figure out Jen's prophecies, and it's like, you shouldn't, because you won't. Prophecies only make sense after the fact. So Tawny has a message just for Poppy from Victor. She says that Poppy already knows the consort's name. So we switch back to Cass, and he's back in their cavern, and he sees Poppy, and he tells her he's being held underground, and that Isbeth is a Demis. So we switch back to Poppy. She tells Kieran and Reaver about Isbeth being a Demis, and decides that she can be killed the same way you kill a god. And then some Cravens show up, and Reaver shifts to take care of it. And Reaver is, like, vicious. Like, he just be, like, ripping people's heads off, and he's not neat about what he has to do. So we switch to Cass. Isbeth and her cronies are talking to him. Cass asks about the cave cat, Poppy's dad, and she tells Cass that he's still where she left him. And she tells him that Poppy is a primal, and that primals can only be killed by love. And Poppy realizes she needs to feed, and of course, like, pouts like a child. Kieran guesses what's wrong and kind of talks her through it. And she feeds on Kieran, and she sees his memories. And so he knows that that's what's going on. So he purposely shows her that time they were at the beach in Scion's Cove when her and Cass were doing their thing, and him and his girl were doing their thing. And apparently everybody was watching everybody else. Interesting. The next day, Kieran, Reaver, and Poppy are traveling with the wagon when the Blood Crown's soldiers come up on them, and they fight, but then more comes, and then Poppy goes all like goddess on them after she sees they're using Shadowstone, because that, of course, could kill the Wolven and the Draken. And someone tells her that's enough, and it's the handmaiden, the weird handmaiden. So the handmaiden tells her that the Blood Queen will kill Cass if she kills the revenants, and that she should just meet with the queen instead. So Poppy agrees. Kieran and Reaver go with her, and the handmaiden is like, I mean, that's fine. Like, y'all are guests, not prisoners. And then Poppy passes out because she's been using her powers all this time. And then also, I feel like there was something happened, though, as to why she passed out. She dreams about the night of the Craven attack when she was little. Her mom fighting the man that was supposed to help them, the Dark One. But you can't really make sense of whatever it is she's dreaming. And then when she wakes up, Kieran is there, and they're in the castle in Carcedonia. Kieran tells her that there's knights and handmaidens everywhere, and Millicent, who is the snarky, the weird handmaiden, the kind of not the same as this one thing, it's not like the others handmaiden. She comes in with the other handmaidens with the white garb of the maiden. Poppy's like, I'm not wearing that. So then Millicent brings her some black clothes. So they go to the throne room, and now the thrones have a different design on them. Isbeth shows up like carried in a golden litter, like Joffrey in Game of Thrones. I mean, redonkulous. And I literally put Gagabaga. So then Malik comes in, Cass's brother, and Isbeth uses the prophecy like a weapon and kind of makes it out like Poppy's army is the one hurting people. Poppy starts to lose it, and then Millicent kind of talks her down, and Reaver is all like, let her go. Reaver's totally team Mad Queen. Poppy and crew are then escorted to a receiving chamber where they're just kind of mingling, and then Isbeth comes up to Poppy, and they have like this little verbal row. Malik jumps in, and Poppy starts going through his mental shields, and he's like, all of a sudden starts holding his head, and his nose is bleeding. And Millicent, the odd handmaiden, has to like escort him out. Then Isbeth is like, I'll let you choose who you're going to see. Is it going to be your father or Castile? And she chooses Castile, of course. That's her husband. They take her blindfolded to where he is, and when she gets to his cell, he is in full-blown bloodlust because they've been draining him and not feeding him, and, you know, so she has to use her gift to, like, heal him and calm him down enough for him to recognize her. So we switch to Cass, and, like, his and Poppy's reunion is, like, super-duper sweet. And it's just as precious as we thought it would be. And even though Isbeth is there, it's still really sweet. It was everything that we wanted. So Poppy demands fresh food and water for Cass. She starts to go all like goddess on him, but she stops herself. And then when Callum gets smart, Callum is this male revenant. And I'm moving it because I'm like all leaned over. It's kind of weird. So Callum is this male revenant, and he's different from the other revenants, and I wonder if he's actually a revenant at all, or if he's something else. Like, I don't know. It's kind of strange. So when Callum gets smart, Poppy stabs him, and he dies, like, temporarily, like, because it's just really hard to kill a revenant, unless you have dragon blood. Then Poppy remembers seeing the cave cat when she was little, and that he has vivid green eyes, and Isbeth is like, oh yeah, you have your dad's eyes. Poppy asks about the Draken, and Isbeth says, the Draken was dealt with, because, sorry y'all, because when Erez, which is Poppy's father, when he came over from Elysium, he brought Jadis, a Draken, with him. And Isbeth just says the Draken was dealt with. So Erez, Poppy's father, came looking for Malik. He and Isbeth had a thing, but then when he wanted to leave, she wouldn't let him. And Isbeth says that her and Erez came together just to make Poppy. I don't understand what happened there. But it doesn't sound consensual. Okay. Isbeth tells Poppy that whatever Elwana did to entomb Malik severed the heartmate bond, and that she won't release Erez because she uses him to make revenants. So she's somehow using Erez's blood to make revenants. So we switch to Cass, and he's in his cell, like, trying to break free. The same odd handmaid Millicent comes in and, like, dunks her hair in his bathwater, and all this dye comes off, and her hair is almost white. And she says that she's the first daughter and that her name is Millicent or Millie. She's Poppy's full-blooded sister, but she is not a goddess. She tells Cass that Poppy is right where Elizabeth wants her, that everything, or Isbeth, excuse me, wants her, that everything has been planned, except it was supposed to be Malik that transitioned her instead of Cass, and she wants to use Poppy to destroy the realm. She says either Poppy will die or she will drown the realms in blood. So we switch to Poppy. She and Kieran are speaking through the bond, trying to come up with a plan. And then that evening, there's another party. So Poppy is talking to Malik and realizes there's something between him and Millicent. They got a thing going on. So Isbeth tells Poppy if she tries to lay siege, that she'll sacrifice all the mortals. And Isbeth tells Poppy that she doesn't want Atlantia. She literally just wants to see every Atlantean dead and Atlantia burned. So just that. That's all she wants. So we switch to Cass, and Callum, the weird golden revenant male, comes in his cell, and they have this little like verbal spar. And then Callum tells him that he's only seen love stop death once, and that was with Nyctos and his consort. And then Callum proceeds to stab Cass in the chest to make him bleed out and go into bloodlust. So we switch to Poppy. She's kind of processing that Isbeth wants all Atlanteans dead and Atlantia burned to the ground. But Isbeth is like, oh, no, it's fine. Not Malik or Cass or the Wolven. They're fine. They can live their lives. But all the rest, because Malik called for the Heartmate trials and Nyctos refused, then, yeah, all of Atlantia can burn since they're Nyctos' favorite. So Poppy tells Isbeth, she's like, I am nothing like you. Because Isbeth is like, oh, like mother, like daughter. She's like, no, I'm nothing like you. So Isbeth like threatens Cass in kind of this roundabout way. And Poppy's like, I could kill you right now. And Isbeth uses her power to start hurting the people in the room. Like making blood leak out of their eyes and ears, which we know that's, Poppy's not going to let innocent people get hurt. So Isbeth literally sends Poppy to her room like a child, to her childhood room. That night, Poppy, calls the mist because she realizes, well, I can do all these things. I wonder if I can call the mist. So she does. So Poppy calls the mist and melts her lock on her door and starts fighting her way out. And she's killing all these knights left and right. She comes across a revenant and decapitates them, even though that apparently still doesn't kill them. They're really difficult to kill. So Kieran finds her and then Reaver, and Reaver is literally drenched in blood because I told y'all Reaver be nasty. So when they get to the hall, there's knights there and they're using mortals as shields. So Poppy and Reaver use their magic to kill the guard. So Poppy and Reaver use their magic to kill the guards, and then the three of them keep going. And when they get to more knights, Reaver just starts literally chomping into people and lighting them on fire. Kieran gets injured. Poppy has to heal him. They make it to Nyctos' temple and it reacts to Poppy. Then Malik shows up. He literally has only stayed for Millicent this whole entire time. He says he'll help him find Cass and then get out. So when they get to Cass, he's in full-on bloodlust. So they decide to knock him out and get him somewhere where they can feed him. So Poppy destroys the cell so no one can ever be held there again. Malik takes them to one of his friend's house. The trio is literally trying to figure out how to feed Cass. Malik volunteers, but Poppy's like, no, I want to do it. And Kieran's like, no, I don't want you to do it because A, you could get hurt, and B, if you get hurt, it's going to make Cass feel some kind of way. But what they end up doing is Kieran and Malik end up holding him while Poppy feeds him, and Cass is back. So he, of course, as soon as he's back in his right mind, is like, everybody out. Me and my girl gotta have some time. And it is as awesome as you think it might be. Poppy and Cass are then in the tub, and she's cleaning him, and then she's on her knees, drying off his legs and stuff, and it's just this very sweet, intimate moment, and she's drying him off, and he's saying how he doesn't deserve her, that he's not worthy of her, and she says, if you weren't, I wouldn't be on my knees for you. And I was like, ma'am, I'm gonna save that for later. So later on, they're snuggling, and Poppy goes to sleep, and Cass hears footsteps and gets up, and it's Kieran, and they embrace and they talk and just have some time with the two of them. And Cass tells Kieran about Millicent being Poppy's sister, and that's when they figure out that Poppy is a primal. And Cass and Kieran wake Poppy up to feed, and it's actually kind of hot. Cass and Poppy have sexy times. Then Cass tells Poppy that Millicent is her sister. Poppy goes to speak with Malik about Millicent, and he tells her that Millie is her sister, that she didn't survive her culling, and that Callum told Isbeth how to make her a revenant. So Malik and Reaver tell Poppy that she's a primal. Poppy says she's not going to be Isbeth's monster. Malik confesses that he tried to kill her when she was little. He's the dark one from her flashbacks, but he couldn't go through with it because he could see the consort in Poppy's eyes. So Cass compels Malik to put a dagger to his throat. Malik's like, yeah, and I'd do it again, because he thinks that Poppy's going to be this like monster. So he thought that he was like taking out the monster before the monster could get grown or something. Anyway, Cass is beating Malik, and then Malik starts fighting back, and they're going at it. Kieran and Reaver both are like, do what you gotta do, man. I'm out. So Poppy ends up using her power to break them up. The people that they're staying with tell them that there's guards going house to house, and they try to leave, but they don't make it in time. So Reaver has to like go all Draken and roast all the guards. Poppy uses her powers on the rest of them. Callum shows up. Then Isbeth shows up. It's like a whole mess, y'all. She tells Poppy that if she will bring Malik, she will let Cass go. And Isbeth tells them that the place is surrounded by revenants, and then Callum cuts Kieran with like a Shadowstone dagger, and this weird like black dot shows up on Kieran's arm, and she says, you have 2 weeks or Kieran's gonna die. So Isbeth gives Poppy her ring, the ring that Malik gave her, so that Poppy can use it to locate him. Isbeth and crew kill the people whose house they were in. Poppy goes all primal on a lot of them, and Cass is like, yo, boo, yo, you got to chill out, like, because we got 2 weeks to get back with Malik. So, Poppy reaches Delano with the Notom and lets him know what's going on. They head for Padonia, this other town. So on the way, they stop in a valley called Wisteria Woods, and Cass takes Poppy to this like really pretty little grove, and they're doing spicy things. And then Cass tells her, your will is not controlled by prophecy, he continued, the sharp edge of his fangs grazing my throat and sending my pulse skittering. Your will is not controlled by a queen or anyone else but you. He worked another finger in, and my knees stiffened as I rose onto the tips of my toes. You are not a harbinger of death and destruction, Poppy. You're a harbinger of change and new beginnings. Tell me you believe that. Oh, casserole. So Cass does things with his hand while he's feeding, and then Poppy does things with her mouth. And then after, Cass and Poppy talk about the joining as a way to like protect Kieran. Cass tells her that even if it doesn't become sexual, it can still be really intense just because of the intimacy. So he tells her that it has to be out in nature, it has to be under the full moon, and they have to be nakies. So he tells her that they may have to do it again if Kieran gets a partner so that he won't outlive them. And Poppy's like, yeah, I mean, let's I want to do it. And I'm like, yeah, me too. So Poppy's like out. She's exhausted. Kieran and Cass are talking about the join-in. Kieran gets Cass to talk about Malik. And then he's like, bro, that's your brother. You need to talk to him. So Cass and Malik talk, and Cass tells Malik that not only did he harm Poppy as a child, but he left her dying. He traumatized her. And Malik says he didn't leave her, that he took her back to Carcedonia. That Alistair saw Malik but never told anyone. So Malik and Millie think Poppy will turn into some kind of monster, and Cass is going to have to stop her. Malik agrees to help Cass defeat Isbeth, and Cass asks Malik about the nursery rhyme, the whole what a pretty Poppy Pickett, watch it bleed, and he's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So they make it to Padonia. There's a reunion with Delano and Vanetta and Emil and the others, and they tell Poppy the Ascended killed or turned all the mortals, which is kind of what they've been doing every town they go to. The Poppy sees Tawny. Vanetta and Gianna have been training Tawny, like helping her learn how to fight and everything. So Poppy and Cass meet with Cass's father and the generals. Cass's dad admits to everyone that the Blood Queen is Isbeth instead of Ileana. Like, it was a name really similar to Cass's mom's name. Anyway, and that they've known this entire time, that they plan to get Malik from the Blood Forest and keep him in the Deity Bones casket, and then use him to defeat Isbeth, then return him to Nyktos and the Consort. Cass goes to talk with his dad, so Kieran and Poppy talk. They talk about the joining. And so what Kieran says to Poppy is, he says, and knowing that you would do this to me means there really aren't words other than that my reasons for agreeing to the joining have very little to do with Cass being a king or you being a primal god, and everything to do with the love I have for the both of you. And I was like, oh. So Poppy and team are in the Blood Forest fighting Craven. More and more Craven keep coming. Reaver has to show up and like barbecue them all. And then Reaver lets them know that he's found the ruins of the temple. So Poppy does the locator spell. It works, and the parchment burns. The ashes turn into this like sparkling dust that turns into a path that they follow. And they're following the path. And Malik asks Poppy if she has any questions. And like, that's not the person you ask if they have questions. So she asks how Coralina, her adopted mom, died. And he tells her that Isbeth made her drink the draken blood. So they stop at a mountain in the Blood Forest. There's a tunnel, and while they're arguing about who's going to go in first, something actually comes out. So it's the Gurms, the skeletal soldiers with the snakes that come out of their mouths. So the Wolven go on attack mode, but Reaver tells them not to bite the Gurms because what's in them is poisonous. So the Gurms are like actually rocking Shadowstone blades. So when Poppy kills one, it crumbles and smells like lilacs. So, of course, when the Gurms open their mouths, there's snakes, and there's a whole rant by the group about the snakes, and it was kind of like this funny little, in the midst of everything that was going on, this kind of like little funny moment. And then Poppy goes all primal, and then she's legit like hiding on a boulder because of the snakes. She doesn't want to walk around on the ground because of the snakes. Reaver tells them that the Gurms must have been sent by Nyktos as sentries to protect Malik. So they find the casket in the cave, they remove it, and they place it on the wagon. Reaver rides in the wagon with his hand on the casket, and Poppy's like, were you friends? And Reaver says that they were once. So while they're riding out of the Blood Forest, Poppy starts complaining about her jaw hurting. She's like, my jaw keeps hurting. And Cass is like, well, quit poking it. So Cass asks Reaver if primals have fangs, and he says, yeah. So that's why Poppy's, jaw is hurting, because she's getting fangs. And Cass is getting like super excited because we all know where Cass's mind went. He immediately went to inappropriate thoughts. They make it to Padonia, and Cass takes Poppy to meet Kieran in a clearing in the woods. Dun, dun, dun. So Cass asks her, they're being, their little clearing is being guarded by the Wolven, but it's not close enough so they can actually hear or see anything. And Cass asks her, if she wants to go through with it, and she says yes. So then Cass is in front of her, and Kieran's behind her, like that time Cass was feeding that was super hot. And then Kieran and Poppy are literally, trying to behave and keep it, as professional as it can be when everybody's naked and biting each other. But Cass is like, let's get it out! So they speak the words, and then Poppy drinks from Cass first, then Kieran feeds from Cass, then Cass bites Kieran and feeds, then Poppy feeds from Kieran, then Cass has to bite Poppy twice, once on each side for him and for Kieran, and so he and Kieran are drinking for Poppy at the same time, and Poppy is like, this feels good, and she's kind of getting lost in the sensations, and she's rubbing against somebody's thigh, and rubbing against somebody else's member, and the guys are just stock still, and then she's like, yes, and then it's on like Donkey Kong. Except, here's the thing. All these people had talked all this junk about this joining and had me thinking this was some XXX rated pornography stuff going on, and it was not. So imagine my disappointment when I get there. And it was just very intimate and very precious, this kind of moment between these three people who all love each other. And yeah, it was hot, but it wasn't like, I need to mention it to my therapist hot. So as they're doing the joining, Poppy can actually like see their essences combining and becoming a cord of three. And then after, the mark on Kieran's arm is gone, but they don't want to take the chance that the joining like canceled out Isbeth's curse. So Cass goes to talk to his father. Poppy goes to the stable to see Malik's casket. She touches it, and I'm like, Poppy, don't just be touching things, because you don't know what happens. Malik comes out, and he's like talking to Poppy and tells her that her woven dagger that she carries is actually made from his bonded woven's bones. I thought there was about to be a fight, but it was just them talking. Kieran, Cass, and Poppy all sleep together, and it's like honestly kind of precious. Like, just reminds me of like a puppy pile. There were some people who legit in Jaylanders put that they didn't like that Kieran slept in Poppy's bed in woven form, and I'm like, it was a comfort thing. He was basically her emotional support woven. Like, those two loved Cass more than anything else in the world, and they comforted each other in their loss. It wasn't anything like inappropriate or like cheating on Cass or, so I don't know where folks be getting stuff. So the crew goes to meet Isbeth and deliver Malik. Isbeth is like going crazy over Mummy Malik, like literally like rubbing his hair and all this stuff, and he's like a dried up prune. They remind her to remove the curse, so Callum cuts Kieran's same arm with a white blade this time, and the curse is removed, and then Kieran stabs Callum in the heart, which doesn't kill him because he's a revenant, or supposedly. Isbeth stabs Malik in the heart with a Shadowstone dagger, and I'm like, wait, well, I did not see that one coming, right? And she says that it had to be Poppy or Malik, and she chose to kill Malik because it has to be someone who loves them to kill them, maybe? I'm not sure. So Callum is talking about the one true king and that he's been waiting for Poppy. Cass rips Callum's heart out, and yet he's still not dead. Then she smells the lilacs, and apparently Malik had to be killed to awaken Colas. I'm not sure. The ground starts shaking. There's all these like demon things coming up out of the splits in the ground called Decay. Poppy has to start using the essence. They're trying to get to Malik. The Decay are literally overwhelming the soldiers, the Wolven, the Draken. Poppy's trying to make her way to Isbeth and Malik. Hissa, the person who said the whole be careful but be brave thing, gets stabbed. She goes down. Poppy's trying to help her, but Millicent's like, no, you have to get to Malik. There's not enough time. So Isbeth is literally about to try and cut off Malik's head with a sword. Poppy throws her woven dagger, but Isbeth sends it flying back, and Delano jumps in front of Poppy to keep her from getting hit by the dagger, and he gets stabbed. He dies. And at this point, I am just freaking sobbing because I'm like, you gotta be freaking kidding me, Delano. So, anywho, Poppy goes all primal. Millicent runs forward and grabs the blade out of Malik's chest, but Isbeth, like, hits her with ether. She goes down. Poppy snatches the crown off of Isbeth's head and backhands her with it, and I was like, finally. Then Isbeth hits her right in the chest with ether. Poppy is down, and she starts seeing Sarah from A Shadow in the Ember, and she literally, like, something tells her, like, just say her name. So she literally screams her name, and then something happens. The whole realm shakes. Poppy starts changing. She's like becoming swirling shadow and light. And I'm like, oh, maybe this is the point where Poppy is ascending, but I don't know if she's ascending or if Sarah is just, like using her body as a vessel. Anyway, she starts lifting the bodies of all her friends. Delano, Niall, Emil, Hissa. These are all the people that are dead at this point. Poppy is literally like obliterating the Decay and the Revenants. It's raining blood. I mean, it's just like, it just goes like balls to the wall. Sarah's essence is kind of controlling Poppy, and then she's like literally breaking every single one of Isbeth's bones, the whole while telling her that she will be erased from history. And then she kills Isbeth, and then Poppy passes out. And she wakes up being cradled by Cass and Kieran, and now she has fangs, so maybe she was ascending into being a primal. I'm not sure. And in true Poppy fashion, she immediately cuts her tongue on her own fangs. Now everyone is alive. So apparently, Poppy, whenever whatever was going on, she brought everyone back that had died. So it was kind of like, it reminded me very much so of, the movie version of Breaking Dawn where you think everybody's dead, but it was just a hallucination. Here, everybody was actually dead, but Poppy brought them back. So Reaver took Malik back to Elysium. Nectus is here. He showed up with Sarah's essence. And Nectus says that he can sense Jadis, that she's still alive. So that's good news, because all we knew is that Isbeth said she took care of it. So Poppy had Sarah and Nyctos help bring everyone back. They even brought back Isbeth's guards, because they said there has to always be balance. Like, you couldn't just bring back some, you had to bring back everybody. So Sarah is the queen of the gods and the most powerful primal for now, is what Nectus says. And Nectus recites the whole Cullis and Sartorius story and tells them that the dead shouldn't be brought back. And Sarah created the Wolven from the Kiyu wolves. So Poppy goes off that this whole time Sarah's been the primal of life and death. Well, everyone said it was Nyctos, and Nectus is like, well, that's the way Sarah wanted it. And she says, why? And Kieran says, for once, I would also like to know the answer to one of her questions. And they said because of what Cullis did, no new primals could be born, that it had to be a female descendant. So if Poppy and Cass have kids, they'll be the first primals actually born. So Millicent and Malik have run off. I don't trust those two. Nectus tells them that they need to find Callum, which I'm like, how's he still alive? Like, Cass literally ripped his heart out. Nectus tells Poppy she is the first primal of life and death, as the two essences have never existed in one person. And then there on the ground, some of the vines and stuff start turning gray. And Nectus tells them that that's Cullis and that they didn't actually stop him. So Nectus tells them that they have to kill Cullis, and they're going to need every person they can find, which is why Sarah let them bring back all those people. He tells them to talk to Erez, which is Poppy's father. Cullis tells them that all the primals and gods have awoken, and now there's going to be a war. And that's where it ends off. So now it's going to be, which Jen said that at some point both of the stories are going to converge. So I think this is what we're starting to see, things heading that way. And I will say that I think that Callum is more than a revenant. And I also think that I'm excited to see how Jen is going to merge these worlds. So, yeah. So that is the recap of the War of Two Queens. Thank you very much. And I'll see you guys next time for A Light in the Flame.